Let's talk about one of the most incredible figures in North American history. A warrior, a diplomat, a man literally caught between two worlds during the birth of the United States. His Mohawk name was Thayendanegea, but history remembers him as Joseph Brant. And believe me, the choices he made still echo today.
England had sold the Indians to Congress. Wow, those are the words Joseph Brant spoke right after the American Revolution. And that one sentence, it just cuts right to the bone, doesn't it? It perfectly captures his story of alliance, of war, and of a betrayal so deep it would change everything for his people.
So it makes you ask, who was this guy, really? Was he a British captain, a Mohawk war chief, a visionary politician? Well, the thing is, he was all of those things at once. And trying to navigate all those identities is what makes his story so absolutely compelling.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at his upbringing in two very different cultures. Then, we'll dive into the impossible choice he faced in the Revolution. After that, his time as a fearsome military leader, followed by his fight for a new homeland. And finally, we'll unpack his very complicated legacy.
Okay, first up, to really get a handle on Joseph Brant, you have to understand the two worlds that made him. He wasn't just one thing or the other. He was this unique product of both Mohawk and British cultures, and he had to learn to navigate both of them from a really young age.
And this timeline, it just lays it all out. He's born Thayendanegea, raised in Mohawk tradition, but look what happens. As a teenager, he's already fighting in a European war. A few years later, he's a professional interpreter, and by his early 30s, he's in London meeting the king. He was learning to walk the corridors of imperial power, but he never forgot where he came from.
So all of this experience becomes absolutely crucial when the American Revolution just explodes onto the scene. For the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, this powerful League of Six Nations, sticking to their centuries-old neutrality was suddenly impossible. They were being forced to choose a side.
And this is a real tragedy. The Great Council Fire of the Confederacy, a symbol of their unity, was extinguished. This powerful political union split, and it literally pitted brother against brother in a civil war. Brant's Mohawk and 3 other nations sided with the British, while 2 others chose the American rebels. It was a devastating fracture.
So why the British? Well, for Brant, it wasn't really about sentiment. It was a cold, hard, strategic calculation. Look at the options. The British Crown had, at least on paper, promised to protect their land from colonists. The Americans? Well, their leaders included men like George Washington, who were land speculators just hungry to push west. For Brant, an American victory looked like the end of his people's world.
Okay, so once he made his choice, Brant didn't hold back. He became one of the most effective and most feared military leaders on the entire northern frontier. His name became legendary to his allies and infamous to his enemies.
He was made a British captain, and he put together this amazing irregular force called Brant's Volunteers. It was a mix of Mohawk warriors and American loyalists, and they were masters of guerrilla warfare. We're not talking about big armies and open fields. This was a brutal, up-close civil war fought farm by farm, neighbor against neighbor.
And when you're that good at what you do, you get a reputation. American propaganda turned him into a boogeyman, painting him as this bloodthirsty savage. They called him the Monster Brant. And the crazy part? He was blamed for atrocities, like the famous Wyoming Valley Massacre, that he wasn't even at. But that reputation stuck, and he became the face of frontier warfare for the Patriots.
So after years of fighting tooth and nail for the British, the war finally ends. And you'd think that would be a relief, right? Nope. For Brant and his people, the peace treaty was a bigger blow than any battle they had ever fought.
This right here, this is the moment of betrayal. In the Treaty of Paris, Britain and the new United States basically just drew a new map. And without even talking to their indigenous allies, the British signed away all the land south of the Great Lakes, including the ancient homelands of the Six Nations. In the entire treaty, their most loyal allies are not mentioned. Not one time, just completely abandoned.
So what do you do when you're facing total disaster? Well, if you're Joseph Brant, you don't waste time on anger. You pivot. He switches from warrior back to diplomat in a heartbeat. Their homes were gone, so he lobbies the British, not for revenge, but for a new homeland. And this number? That's what he secured, almost 1 million acres. It was called the Haldimand Proclamation. It was a land grant from the British to the Six Nations who had fought for them, creating a new territory along the Grand River in what's now Ontario. I mean, to pull that off right after being completely sold out, it's just a stunning diplomatic achievement, and it created the community that still exists today.
But Brant was always thinking bigger. He knew that the threat of American expansion wasn't just facing his people. It was facing all Indigenous nations. So he hits the road, traveling tirelessly to convince different nations to form a united front, a Western Confederacy. The goal was simple but powerful: negotiate with the U.S. as one single strong voice.
So in the last years of his life, Brant was still this larger-than-life figure. And he was just as controversial as ever. He was a tireless champion for his people, for sure, but his methods, well, they definitely caused some conflict.
This chart really shows you the tightrope he was always walking. I mean, on one side, you've got these incredible achievements, securing a homeland, meeting with Washington. But on the other side, man, the challenges were relentless. He was fighting with British officials, facing criticism from his own people. It really shows you just how tough his position was.
And yet, you just can't deny his footprint on the map. It's everywhere, in both Canada and the U.S. The city of Brantford, hospitals, monuments. His name is literally etched into the land he fought for. And you can see his portraits today in museums, showing a man who commanded respect wherever he went.
So that brings us right back to the beginning. Joseph Brant was never just one thing. He was a British officer and a Mohawk chief. His loyalty, when you boil it all down, wasn't to a king or a flag. It was to the survival of his people. He made impossible choices in a world that was changing under his feet. And it leaves us with a really tough question, doesn't it? How should we remember the heroes who just don't fit into neat little boxes?